My parents fired me for being too expensive after 12 years leading the engineering team. We can get 3 junior engineers for your salary. My younger brother smirked during the meeting. Nothing personal, just cost cutting. I silently packed my things and left. Their desperate calls began when hey Reddit. My name is Rachel Carter and I had spent 12 straight years proving my worth in a company that, as it turned out, never truly valued me. Even worse, it was my family's company, my parents' pride and joy. And for over a decade I had worked myself into the ground for them, believing I was building something meaningful, something that would one day be mine to lead. Instead, I was discarded like old tech, outdated, expensive and inconvenient. But to really understand how I ended up fired by my own parents with my smug younger brother grinning across the boardroom table, you have to know where it all began. My entire life had been shaped by this company. It was more than a job. It was my identity, and giving it everything I had still wasn't enough. I was 23 when I joined Carter Engineering full-time, fresh out of MIT with a degree in mechanical engineering and a head full of ideas. My father, Donald Carter, was an old-school industrialist, stoic, calculating, not one to waste words. My mother, Lillian, was the CFO and the only person more disciplined than him. Together they had built the company from a mid-sized machine parts manufacturer into a competitive name in the aerospace supply industry, and they had always told me I'd take it even further. "You've got the brains and the fire," my dad used to say, patting me on the back after long days. "Someday this place will be yours." So I worked like it already was. I started in the prototyping division, burning late nights with welders and CAD teams, testing tolerances, leading pilot projects. By year 4 I was managing major contracts. By year 7 I was head of engineering, reporting directly to the board, my parents and a few long-time investors. The company became my life. No weekends. No vacations. No sick days. I was the first one in and the last one out. I miss birthdays. I broke off an engagement. I even skipped my best friend's wedding because a deadline came up last minute. I thought the sacrifices would be worth it, that someday I'd run the company and all of this would pay off. But in the background of this was my younger brother, Kyle. Kyle was the kind of guy who floated through life with the safety net of being the only son, where I had to prove myself with every inch of progress. Kyle skated in and out of departments, trying on titles like costumes head of marketing for 3 months, operations strategist for 6, director of innovation, whatever that meant, for a year. He wasn't dumb, but he had no grit, and everyone knew it. Still, my parents coddled him. "He's just finding his place," my mom would say, sipping her herbal tea while I was running on 3 hours of sleep. Give him time. I gave him time. I gave him space. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And apparently I gave him my job. The betrayal came on a rainy Tuesday when my assistant told me I'd been summoned to the boardroom for a strategic planning discussion. I walked in expecting to present the updated Q3 timelines for a military contract. Instead, the entire board sat there. My parents at the head call, slouched with a smug grin, and 2 unfamiliar suits who introduced themselves as external consultants. "Rachel," my father said, fingers steepled. "This isn't going to be easy to hear." The phrase made my stomach drop. He wasn't the type to sugarcoat. My mother continued, "We've been reviewing cost structures, and after consulting with external analysts, we've realized that your current salary, while earned, is no longer sustainable." I blinked. "Excuse me?" Kyle leaned forward. "Nothing personal, Ratch. It's just with the economy the way it is, we can get 3 junior engineers for the cost of keeping you. It's a no-brainer." I stared at him. "You're joking." My father shook his head. "We're restructuring. We need agility and a lower overhead. 12 years. 12. I gave up my 20s, my relationships, my mental health. For what? To be replaced by interns and Excel spreadsheets?" I asked, my voice shaking. "This isn't about your work ethic," my mother said, not meeting my eyes. "It's purely financial." I looked at Kyle. He was already spinning his pen between his fingers like he'd just won something. And maybe he had. He'd always wanted more control, more influence. And now, with me out of the way, I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply stood up, walked out of the boardroom, and went straight to my office. I packed my things, my photos, my sketches, the custom-made titanium paperweight for my first solo project. No one followed me. No one said goodbye. As I walked past the rows of cubicles I helped design, past the engineers I had mentored and the prototypes I had bled over, something in me hardened. The part of me that had always wanted to belong to the Carter legacy, it went cold. But it wasn't until 3 weeks later that I realized just how deep my parents' mistake had gone. See, what Kyle and the consultants didn't understand was that this company ran because I ran it. The systems, I built them. The supplier relationships, I cultivated those. The military contracts, my connections, my credibility, my designs. And when I left, I didn't just walk away. I took everything they had taken for granted. The strange thing about leaving a company after 12 years, especially when it's your family's company, is that your phone doesn't ring immediately. It takes a while for them to feel your absence. The first week I sat on my couch and stared at the silence. No emails. Number 5 a.m. texts. No frantic calls about broken specs, overseas supplier delays, or parts failing stress tests. My body still jolted awake every morning out of habit, but the silence was louder than I expected. And then the messages started. The first was from Gary, the plant supervisor. I'd known him for a decade. Hey Rachel. Weird question. Did you ever get around to uploading the updated specs for the Delta project? Kyle's been asking, but we can't find them anywhere. I stared at the screen. The specs. They were in my head. I hadn't uploaded them yet. I'd been revising the design at the time they fired me. I didn't respond. The second message came 2 days later. This time from Meredith, the lead financial analyst. Patel E., sorry to bug you, but the vendor pricing logs from last quarter seem to be missing. I think you were the only one who updated them regularly. Kyle said you kept them in your personal folder, but it's password locked. Can you help? I didn't respond to that either. I wasn't being vindictive, but I also wasn't obligated to clean up their mess. They'd fired me, told me I was too expensive, acted like my knowledge was replaceable, like my 12 years of process building, supplier negotiations, and military contract handling could be replaced by 3 junior engineers. Let them figure it out. By week 2, I'd finally exhaled. For the first time in years, I walked through my neighborhood in the afternoon sun. I had coffee with friends I hadn't seen in months. I signed up for ceramics class just because I could, and that's when the first call from my mother came. Missed. Then another. Then a voicemail. Rachel, we need to talk. It's important. There's a situation with the DoD contract. Please call me back. I didn't call back. She texted again that evening. Kyle doesn't have your direct contact at Blackridge Defense. They're asking questions about the torque simulations and may pull the deal if they don't get clarity. I finally replied, I'm not your employee anymore. Her response came within seconds. Don't be petty. That made me laugh out loud. Petty. Petty was firing your daughter in a boardroom ambush and replacing her with someone who had never held a project past month 4. Petty was acting like all my work was overhead. I muted the conversation. Week 3 brought more calls, not just from my parents but from the team I had trained and mentored. Rachel, I'm sorry, but none of us can get the new C80 system to export the correct format. You were the only one who really knew how to make it work with the supplier specs. Rachel, your brother approved a change to the cooling system on the G7 units. But the last time we did that, it caused microfractures in the composite base. We tried to tell him, but he doesn't want to hear it. Rachel, please. I don't want to be disloyal, but we're falling apart without you. I felt a strange mix of indication and sorrow. I didn't want them to suffer, but I also wasn't going to return to fix what Kyle and my parents broke. Still, I wasn't idle. While they were floundering, I was building. See, I hadn't left empty-handed. I took nothing confidential or proprietary, of course. I had integrity, but I had something far more powerful than any document or file: relationships, vendors I had personally negotiated with for years, engineers from other firms I'd collaborated with, government contacts I built trust with after delivering complex designs ahead of schedule. These weren't LinkedIn acquaintances. These were people who respected me, and they were curious. One by one, I started receiving LinkedIn messages, private emails, quiet coffee invitations. Rachel heard what happened. You okay? Looking to start something new? If you ever need a partner, we back you. At first I wasn't sure. But after the 5th message from a trusted supplier offering to support a new venture, I started sketching something on a whiteboard in my kitchen. It was rough, but it was mine. By month 2, Carter Engineering was in crisis mode. Their flagship military contract, the one I had personally brought in, was under review. Turns out the redesign Kyle approved without consulting thermal engineering caused stress failures in the prototype. Blackridge Defense wasn't just threatening to pull the contract. They were preparing a legal complaint for breach of terms. One morning I got an email from one of their reps, "Rachel, if you're no longer with Carter, we'd love to talk. Off the record, we've always preferred working through you." I agreed to meet, not to sabotage Carter but because I deserved to know how badly they burned everything. At the meeting, their lead engineer shook my hand and said, "We're pulling out. It's a disaster. But if you ever decide to start something of your own, we'd be open to future collaboration." That was all I needed. By the end of that month, I filed the paperwork to launch my own engineering firm. It was small, just me, a laptop, and a handful of consultants I trusted, but word got out fast. A few of the junior engineers from Carter reached out and asked if I had openings. They didn't like where things were heading. The company morale was tanking. Kyle was over his head and my parents were silent figureheads. I brought on 3 of them as contractors. By month 4 we landed our first project, smaller than the Carter contracts but highly technical, and we nailed it ahead of schedule, under budget. Then came another project, then a referral. Within 8 months I had a real team, an office space, clients, a website, a brand, and I was happy. Tired but happy. Then one Tuesday morning I got an email from my father. Subject: request to meet Rachel, your mother and I would like to speak with you in person. Please let us know when you're available. We believe we made a mistake. I stared at it for a long time, not because I was tempted but because I finally didn't feel anything. We met at a quiet restaurant across town. I showed up 20 minutes late on purpose. They were already seated. My mother looked older. My father's shoulders seemed smaller. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing up awkwardly. "I'm not here to come back," I said, sliding into the booth. "Let's start there." They nodded. "We know," my mom said softly. There was a long silence. "We shouldn't have fired you," my dad admitted. "It was short-sighted. Kyle, he wasn't ready." "Kyle never wanted to run that company," I said flatly. "He just wanted to be important. We let him convince us you were too expensive," my mom said. "That we needed to modernize the org chart." "You didn't just fire me," I replied. "You humiliated me. You discarded me like I was a liability." My father winced. "We were wrong." It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest he'd ever come. They looked tired, worn down, desperate. "We need help," my mother said. I sat back, crossed my arms, and said the words I never thought I'd say. "I'm not your safety net anymore." My mother blinked. My father went still. "I built that company from the inside." I continued. "And you threw me out because I cost more than Kyle's vision. So now you can pay the cost of losing me." They didn't argue. They knew. 6 months later, Carter Engineering was quietly acquired by a competitor. Kyle resigned before the deal closed. My parents retired early. And me, I signed a 3-year exclusive contract with Blackridge Defense. My firm is now one of the most sought-after boutique engineering firms in the region. We're still small, but we're smart, tight, and deeply respected. I never went back and I never looked back, because sometimes being fired is the best thing that can happen to you, especially when it frees you from a legacy that never valued you in the first place.